Hello there, my very good friends. Andy Murray here for WhatCulture Wrestling to cover AEW Dynamite ups and downs this week. Same review, different bald guy. Sorry about this. Oh, it's Tony Khan. Better answer it. Hi, Tony. How's it going? Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, the check came through this morning. It's actually with my bank right now as we speak. Yeah, cool. Thanks as always. Keep them coming, man. Keep them coming. It's much appreciated. All right, catch you later, Tony. I've got a video to shoot. Got to speak to the people about your show last night. Okay, cool. Bye. See you later. Sorry about that. Terribly unprofessional, but hey, here we go. Look, I get it. You guys love Simon Miller. I love Simon Miller too, but it's not so different. He's bald. I'm bald. He loves wrestling. I love wrestling. He's got gigantic muscles. Yeah, that doesn't really work, does it? But I promise you, if we stick together, we're going to get through this thing together and we're going to have a great time. So, without any further ado, let's do the damn thing. So AEW Dynamite this week started off with MJF outside, staring down the camera, spitting, shouting, yelling and swearing at all you fine people at home. What have you guys done to deserve that? I have no idea, but you've clearly done something to piss the guy off if he's opening the show in this way. He is, of course, waiting for Hangman Page. He wants to meet him in the streets. He says, you've woken up the devil, and if you've got you want to use the word buckshot, if you want to throw that around, I've got a bullet with your name, son. So this is obviously something being done nice and early in the show to set up a payoff later on, but I thought it was a very effective way to kick things off. You were immediately setting an intense note. You were immediately telling your audience that something crazy is going to happen later on. When MJF is this locked in and he's spitting and swearing down the camera lens in such a manner, it usually means that something ugly, nasty, and violent is coming later in the show. And as a man who is ugly, nasty, and violent, I mean, I'm only two of those things at very most, but I very much appreciate this as a little tone setter. There's not really a whole lot to analyze and pick apart here, but it's a pretty easy up, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? It's like 30 seconds long. Are you gonna sit here and pick holes in it? Maybe we'll do that a bit later on, but you know, not right now. Good, solid, great start to the show. Good energy, MJF's pissed. And speaking of guys who are pissed off at one another, this was followed immediately by the big contract signing, Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet, coming up at Revolution. This is not only a feud decider, a bitter blood feud equalizer, if you will, it's also going to determine who the next number one contender for the AEW World Championship is. So we've got the big hurrah, the big contract signing. All the pieces are in play. You get Swerve Strickland coming out with Prince Nana by his side, and then curiously, you get Ricochet coming out, but this week he's not wearing the embassy robe. He's not wearing Jimmy Rave's robe that has been carried around on Ring of Honor shows for decades at this stage. It's been a big fixture of this feud, and you know, an object in between these guys, but something that really means something. I think ultimately in pro wrestling, I know a lot of people got a bit annoyed about Punk having a friendship bracelet last year, but ultimately, when it comes to these things, you can assign meaning to anything, right? And you can believe in anything if you allow yourself to. In this situation, it's something, the rope, that's been on TV for a long time. Yeah, it's been out of the zeitgeist for a while, but it's back now, and they've explained the significance. So for Ricochet to go from wearing that and disrespecting it every single week to not wearing it in this segment was a pretty interesting start. Now, they do address that in the contract signing itself, which starts off, they're trading barbs, they're shooting back and forth at one another. Ricochet's being a smart ass, he calls himself a true superstar, all this, he's doing his little laugh, I can't really do that very well, but you get the picture. Swerve, you get the impression during this segment that he's kind of just had enough. He doesn't want to hear this guy yapping on anymore. He just wants to get to Revolution so he can get his hands on him. And when the subject of the embassy robe not being worn is brought up, Ricochet, he suggests that he's doing something. It's getting some modifications, some upgrades, in his words. So I have no doubt at Revolution, he's going to have done something absolutely dastardly to the embassy robe, to Jimmy Rave's robe. He's I don't know, turned it into a bandana or something, made a beach towel out of it. Who knows? We'll get there. We'll find out at the pay-per-view. And the segment gradually builds in intensity, especially as Swerve starts to speak a little bit more. Like I said, he's had enough of the nonsense. He just wants to put this guy in the dirt. But he's one step ahead of Ricochet throughout all of this. He says, you stole the robe, you stabbed me with some scissors, blah, 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 blah. You think that rolling me up for a pin counts as some kind of win? No chance. The biggest mistake you made was keeping me breathing, which in itself would be a pretty killer line to close the show. He's basically telling the guy, you should have tried to kill me, or you should have absolutely just, finished the job. Attempted murders all over the place in our pro wrestling these days. But no, Swerve gets up, he walks away, he's going to leave. Ricochet, that dastardly little scoundrel, he pulls out a pair of scissors, but Swerve sees it coming. He's a smart guy, he's a smart babyface, this Swerve. He is one step ahead. He turns around, before Ricochet can stab him, he grabs him by the wrist, and then he pulls out his own pair of scissors and just hits him right in his bald ass dome, makes him hit the deck, leaves him bleeding to close the segment. This, of course, has implications later in the show because there is a main event featuring these two guys on opposite sides of a tag team, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But all in all, this was pretty cool. This was a really good, you know what to expect from contract signings, right? 99% of the time it's going to end in some form of violence. But I think that portraying Swerve as a smart babyface who has learned from previous actions puts him into a really good position going into Revolution. And there's actually a pretty cool subversion of this in the main event later on. It's showing that Swerve isn't just some dumb guy who keeps falling into the same traps all the time, although the main event later on shows that he is still a bit tempestuous. So we'll cover all that in a little bit, but I really liked the, pardon the pun, Swerve of Strickland countering the scissors with some scissors of his own. It's another up if you haven't already inferred that much from my tome. Look, sometimes I get really annoyed with the lack of respect shown to the bald community in pro wrestling. Bald frauds, a line that's getting thrown out a lot this week. But then I look at guys like Ricochet and I realize that, most of the bald people on these shows are kind of assholes. So, big bad night for the community as a whole, but maybe this is something we can learn from. Speaking of which, here's a segment involving Don Callis. Yes, my very good friends, AEW Dynamite is absolutely rolling at this point, and if you were done with one bald megalomaniac, here comes another. It's Don Callis, and representing his family, we've got Mark Davis, the Murder Machines of Lance Archer and Brian Cage, teaming up with Brian Keefe from the Learning Tree in an all-star 8-man tag against Will Ospreay, Orange Cassidy, Mark Briscoe, and Powerhouse Hobbs. And AEW likes to do these all-star tags every now and then. They serve as a really cool way to not only just give you some red-hot action, which this gave you from start to finish, but also combine multiple people who don't like each other into one nice, neat little package and try and branch off multiple stories in the process. In this case, the key stories largely revolve around Will Ospreay and Mark Davis. Davis, he's not too happy about being part of the Don Callis family, and this was heavily played on throughout the match and in the post-match. As he's coming to the ring, the announcers mentioning that Davis kind of has to be prodded down to the ring. Doesn't really want to be there. He's not fully invested in being part of this monster army that Don Callis has assembled, and of course he has that history with Will Ospreay, who faces Davis's former Aussie Open tag team partner Kyle Fletcher in a steel cage at Revolution. As for the match itself, this thing was completely insane. I mean, if you want to tune in, when I see the billing, an 8-person tag, and the 8 people are as talented as these people, I want to see spots popping off all over the place. I want to see the crowd chanting beef, beef, beef when Powerhouse Hobbs is getting into it with 2 mountains in the form of Lance Archer and Brian Cage. And hey, Mark Davis, he's a mountain himself. 3 mountains against 1 Hobbs. It's not fair. None of this is fair. And yet Hobbs, I think, looked like $1 million in this whole thing. He's just wrapped a feud with Big Bill. That's kind of represented a little bit by having Brian Keefe on the opposite side. And by the way, great to see Brian Keefe getting some cool opportunities on AEW TV recently. This man has been underutilized for far too long, my friends. Just like Simon, I love Brian Keefe. I think the Bounty Hunter gimmick is awesome. You had the Bounty match last week, you had the Bandito match the other week. This is great stuff. More Brian Keefe on my TV, please. He's very good, and I enjoy watching him wrestle. But Brian Keefe wasn't there to win last night. In fact, he was there to take the pin. He sent Ospreay to the ropes. Ospreay countered with an Oz cutter, and then hits the hidden blade for the 1, 2, 3. This set up the post-match angle, which was all about reasserting some heel dominance despite Ospreay getting the win, with the heels just taking everyone out. Powerhouse Hobbs got choke powerbomb, whatever the Murder Machines call that move, onto an upright set of stairs. It looked really nasty. Everyone else got taken out, and Ospreay was the center of attention. He was choked out in the middle of the ring. The Murder Machines came back in, put the boots to him. This set the stage for Kyle Fletcher to come down the ramp. Kyle makes a grand entrance. He takes his shirt off, gets his torso out. Look, if I had a torso like that, I would get it out at every opportunity as well. Guy looks great. He comes down to the ring and commits some truly dastardly acts. These guys are just beating the absolute Essex out of Will Ospreay, and there's a little bit of tension here between Kyle and Mark Davis. Kyle tells him to know his place. You've just arrived here in the stable. Do what I tell you. What he tells him is to whack Will with a steel chair. Ospreay gets absolutely clobbered. Mark Davis continues to look a little bit conflicted. Don Callis, that bald rat, owns his contract and he's not too happy about it. So Kyle's standing tall to end all of this. You've got the added intrigue of what the heck is going on with Davis and his stuff. And is he going to eventually break away and go babyface from this stable, or is he going to stay? Is he going to embrace the dark side and become a fully fledged, committed member of the Don Callis family? You've got Will maybe dealing with some injuries now going into the steel cage. That adds an interesting new dynamic to that match because Will obviously is a very action-oriented wrestler. His entire style is based around cutting-edge action and spots and moments that make you go, how the hell did he do that? But if he's entering carrying some injuries and he's a bit woozy from getting choked out here, maybe that alters his style in the steel cage match with Kyle Fletcher. I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the matches I'm most looking forward to at Revolution this weekend. It's an easy up. This whole thing was great. Up next on the show, we get a very well done video package indeed, highlighting another Don Callis family match coming up at Revolution, that being Konosuke Takeshita versus Kenny Omega. This was a really good bit of business. It was nice and short, it was well made, it was well put together. It did a really good job of portraying Takeshita's pathway through AEW, starting out as a guy, I'm not going to use the word skinny or anything like that because he was still a big dude, but his transformation into the monster he is today, the force of nature that he has become before our very eyes in AEW. You have Kenny Omega speaking from the heart, and you have the footage, of course, of Takeshita beating Kenny twice in 6 days in 2023. It's all really just great kind of competitive frameworky stuff. It's the kind of storytelling that AEW kind of made its name on in the first place. Yeah, of course they have personal issues as well. Takeshita's an asshole because he's affiliated with the Don Callis family. Kenny was booted out of all of that. I thought this did a really good job of summarizing everything that has happened to these guys in their AEW runs so far against each other in about 1.5 to 2 minutes. That's ultimately what you want from a video package. So yeah, like, easy up. This is it's a good show. It's a good show. Cope versus Wheeler Yuta was up next, and the narrative of this match was that Wheeler Yuta was the last man, the last ally Jon Moxley had standing heading in to his match with Cope for the world title at Revolution. So I was as surprised as anyone when, instead of going just straight for the throat, instead of coming out all guns blazing, intense, fired up, wrestling at 100 miles an hour, I was very surprised when Cope locked up Wheeler Yuta and proceeded to have a very clean and clinical and good wrestling match with him. I thought this was just going to be a pure 6 brawl, given the tone of this feud so far. The Concertos, Pac, Claudio, even Marina Shafir, Willow caved her skull in the other week. The tone of this feud has been extremely intense so far. So for them to slow this down and have a more traditional wrestling match, initially I was like, what the hell's going on? What have they done? Why have they de-escalated all of this? I was a very confused little boy. This lasted about 10 seconds until it became very clear what Adam Copeland was trying to do. Instead of going just guts out, swinging swords and chopping lords, he was trying to get inside Wheeler Yuta's head a different way. He wrestled a very respectful wrestling match with this guy to mess with him, because the whole point of this is that Yuta is a very emotional guy. He's the guy who's kind of been corrupted into doing all of this Death Rider stuff. He's not as invested in Jon Moxley's narrative as Moxley and Pac and all these other people are. He's a good boy in his soul and his heart. He's just been led astray a little bit. So Cope's method of demonstrating that wasn't to put him on the shelf, it was to beat him conventionally in a very fair wrestling match. Just, beat him fair and square, outclass him on the night, and then shake his hand after the bell and go, that's what respect looks like. And this, of course, did not sit well with one Jon Moxley, another bald asshole on this show, because, oh boy, was he pissed afterwards. Long after Cole not Cole, long after Cope had headed to the back. Moxley hit the ring straight away, and he's furious at Wheeler Yuta. He's going, what the hell was that? Why did you shake his hand, you little pube? Slaps him around a little bit, shoves him, gets right in Wheeler Yuta's face until Wheeler Yuta eventually says, no, Jonathan, this will not stand. Gives him a very gentle, touch. It wasn't much of a slap. It was like a little echo of a slap. It was half a slap. It was nap. And leaves the ring. Walks out on Jon Moxley. So now Jon Moxley is standing alone at Revolution, not because everybody got put on the shelf by Adam Copeland, but because Adam Copeland was very smart and manipulated Wheeler Yuta by having a clean wrestling match with him. So I'm going to kind of split this into two for the sake of the review, because there was the post-match promo from Moxley as well. First of all, the match and the little shove and all of that. It's a very clear up. Look, the storytelling is very effective. It's a nice change of pace. It's a nice change of pace from the usual Death Rider stuff, which is usually super violent and super overbearing. This was kind of... It was a subversion that I did not see coming, and it was extremely well done by a veteran wrestler in Adam Copeland and a rising up-and-comer in Wheeler Yuta. But moving on from the match, you get this just fizzing post-match promo from Jon Moxley, who maybe feels like the walls are starting to close in on him a little bit. Jon Moxley is starting to feel a little bit alone, but he's defiant. He's a dog. He is absolutely spitting. It's like MJF earlier in the show. He's raging as he's talking down the microphone. He hates Adam Copeland, man. If that wasn't clear enough, if that wasn't perfectly clear over the past few weeks, these two old guys, they don't really like each other, guys. Moxley said he's going to enjoy every second of beating Cope's ass, and he is the only person in the business who respects that there is no respect in this business. It's a real clash of ideologies now between these two dudes going into Revolution, and I think this did a great job of building to that match and adding an extra layer of anticipation. I've seen a lot of people maybe down on the Death Riders angle, but I think when you're reviewing stuff, it's always a good idea to try and look for the positives, and I think this was a really positive night for the story as a whole. So look, I'm more excited than when I walked in. If you watch a match in a segment and a promo, and you leave it fired up, more so than when you came in, boom, hit that green number down there. Following on from this, we got a bit of a tonal shift as the show took a turn for the wacky in a great way, because, I mean, who doesn't love the Outrunners? We got a montage from them. It was this grainy aspect ratio as well, VHS. They're running through some highlights, looking at some photos from their times working the world-class territory when they were wrestling the Von Erichs, and their times rolling with the Midnight Express on the territory scenes. They've all been building up to this for decades and decades, that the youngest men alive have been grinding on the scene. They now finally have the opportunity to become World Tag Team Champions at Revolution. They're doing press-ups, they're curling them biceps, they're doing crunches, they're getting ready. It was perfectly fitting with the athletic, what am I talking about? The 80s action movie aesthetic. That's the word I was looking for, that the Outrunners have portrayed since day one. Look, this is, what a fun program this is. I mean, you've got absolute forces of nature over here in the Hurt Syndicate versus the youngest men alive, who are just insanely insanely good fun. And I think this has the potential to be a completely different match in AEW. This Revolution card is full of work rate bangers and all that stuff, and I love that stuff, don't get me wrong. But this is going to be a little bit different. I think they're going to give you a slightly different flavor, an old school style pro wrestling match with faces in peril and comebacks in heat. Or maybe the Hurt Syndicate will just bulldoze these guys. I hope not, because the youngest men alive absolutely rock. Either way, look, what do you want me to do? I haven't found a down yet. It's an up. We then go back to MJF, who is still outside the arena waiting for Hangman Page. Renee Paquette comes along and goes, hello MJF, you're still waiting. And Maxwell Jacob Friedman went, yes Renee, I'm still waiting. That coward Hangman Page has not shown up. Cue the first attempted murder of this segment, when Hangman Page does indeed roll up. He's got a big old truck that has some cow horns on the front. He's from Texas, I guess. It makes sense. JBL stuff, all that. Except probably a bit of a nicer guy to hang out with than JBL, I imagine. Hangman Page. But of course, Hangman runs him off. He runs MJF off, chases him into the arena. He goes through the backstage area. He finds a guy quickly. He gets his hands on MJF and he batters this dude. He takes him down the ramp. He throws him. But when this guy falls on the mat and on the floor, and he turns around and he rolls around and he's going, he told me to do it. He made me do it. I'm sorry. It's pretty clear that MJF has pulled a decoy. And that's the whole pivot of this segment. The point is that MJF has lured Hangman into something terrible. So they end up brawling into the ring. MJF goes for a heat seeker. It gets countered. Hangman tries to hit the buckshot. That gets countered when MJF hits him right in the willy with a kick. It's just rude behavior, if nothing else. And it escalates from there. I mean, it escalates to our second attempted murder of this one segment when MJF from underneath the ring pulls out some lighter fluid, douses the downed Hangman with it, pulls out a lighter, and he's going to immolate this guy in the middle of it. You can't get arrested for that. It's just reckless. But you might burn the building down. Come on. What are we doing here? You're not going to get to the pay-per-view. You're going to be behind bars. And it actually takes a flood of people. Like, I don't know, like 20 security guards. Like, everyone in the world, 200 people come down the ring, pile on Max. They are the only things stopping him from turning Hangman Page into an overcooked barbecued sausage in all of this. So, like, obviously, there's Hangman Page and fire have a checkered past in AEW. He's burned down a few houses in his time, and he almost got a taste of death here, I guess. But maybe it does serve him right. He did go after MJF in his car earlier in the night, like 1 minute before all this. So I don't know. Maybe it balances out. Either way, look, this has the potential to be a generational match, I think, in AEW. You've got Hangman, very complex character work throughout the past couple of years. I think, aside from maybe Tony Storm, shows the highest level of commitment to his character and his persona on TV, and he's dancing in these shades of grey. Obviously, against MJF, he can't be a heel against MJF, brother. That doesn't work. So he's, after being the most dastardly man alive, who was corrupted into doing these things, like, you know, burning down houses and other unspeakable acts, he is now pivoting in a different direction, but not in a way where he's just suddenly like forgotten everything that happened, not in a way where he is suddenly this virtuous paragon of justice or whatever. No, he's still Hangman. He's just going through some things, man, and I'm going through the motions as I put another up on the counter for this really good pro wrestling show. It's a good go-home show. Up next, we have Lexi Nair backstage with Ash Avildsen, who is the creator of the upcoming movie Queen of the Ring, which of course features several AEW contracted talents in it. We've seen the red carpet photos. Toni Storm was there. She's in the movie. She was there to hype it up, cutting a very typical promo of hers, where she said that the only disappointing thing was that her gratuitous nude scene had been cut from the movie in general. Toni Storm, her level of commitment cannot be denied to the bit. Ash Avildsen, I think, he put the movie over, explained it was about the life and times of Mildred Burke and all of this stuff, and the whole thing was not only a bit of promotion for Queen of the Ring, but also a little entree for the sit-down interview with Renee Paquette, Toni Storm, and Mariah May coming later in the show. So, look, when these promotional things exist on pro wrestling shows, you don't necessarily curse their existence. You understand why they're there. There's AEW wrestlers in the film. Of course, they're going to hype the show. They're going to hype the movie. I'm going to give this a down, though. I'm going to give this a very gentle down. It's nitpicky, I know. But look, they used this to say that the movie Queen of the Ring is presenting the upcoming women's tag match, which is up next. It's Thunder Rosa and Kris Statlander versus Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. But when none of the women in the movie are in the match, that's a little bit of a disconnect. And yes, I know Britt Baker's off TV, and yes, I know Kim Hill is off TV. I don't know, just felt a little bit disconnected. And did the Mariah May Toni Storm thing really need an introduction thing? I don't know. Look, I wasn't angry watching this or anything. I just felt that the narrative threads there could have been sewed up a little bit tighter to make a nice woolly jumper. Instead, we kind of got a half-finished cardigan, if that makes sense. Very gentle down. But moving on from this, we did get that women's tag, which I'm pleased to say was very good indeed. Kris Statlander and Thunder Rosa versus Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. Ford and Bayne is obviously a new alliance, and last week they had a pretty awkward in-ring segment with the steel chair and people not moving and all this stuff. Something went wrong timing-wise, communication-wise. It didn't work out. And I think that led to a few people maybe looking at this match and going, well, if the segment didn't work out, how's the match going to work out? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. Kris Statlander's in it, so how could it possibly be bad? I think she's one of the best wrestlers in the entire company, quite frankly. And look, while this wasn't the longest match on the show or anything like that. It was good. It was a very good TV match. I particularly enjoyed Meg and Bayne using human beings as projectiles, launching them out of the ring on top of each other. Even poor Penelope Ford wasn't safe. She thought she was safe, but she was not. When Statlander was outside the ring with Thunder Rosa, Meg and Bayne just grabbed her and launched her over the top rope as well. Cool, why not? Bodies flying everywhere. Statlander was a big factor in this match. Of course, she is the powerhouse of the division alongside Meg and Bayne, and that's been the foundation of their budding rivalry through all of this. But she was actually taken out towards the end. The heels were 2-on-1 on Thunder Rosa, who put up a fight but could not withstand the barrage of heeldom coming her way. Meg and Bayne got the pin after hitting Fate's Descent for a very effective bit of business. I think if you were someone who was maybe a bit dissuaded by the segment last week when it went wrong, or when it didn't quite work out as planned, this probably did a good job of getting you back on board. I would quite like to see another tag team match between these two sides, but I would critically also like to see another Statlander versus Bayne singles match down the road as well. Megan is a very interesting prospect. I think aside from her powerful offense and all of her stuff looks good, she's got a real poise about her. She carries herself like the biggest deal in the room. That's very important. That's a trait you can't always teach. So promising stuff across the board here. Yeah, it would have been cool to see a little bit more, maybe, but hey, it's an up. Up next, Mercedes Moné is with Renee Paquette backstage for a neat and tidy little segment based on the two bantering each other back and forth. Mercedes is, of course, defending her TBS championship against Stardom's Momo Watanabe at Revolution this weekend. She put Momo over a little bit before saying that she was definitely going to kick her ass and it would be easy and all of this stuff. Momo's wrestling on Collision, so we'll see if anything comes of that. There was a cute little bit at the end here, though. Mercedes showing a bit of self-awareness here. She queued Renee up in the second time in the segment for one of her catchphrases. Renee got the wrong one. Mercedes went, no, not that one, and immediately corrected her, which I thought was pretty good. It's kind of playing on the idea. These Mercedes segments, a lot of time, it's like catchphrase. It's like build. Sometimes a little bit structurally similar. Sometimes maybe a little bit mechanical. Not to say they're performed badly, but the structure of her promos is very samey. They kind of flipped that up, and she kind of acknowledged that by going, no, the other one! Which I thought was a good bit of business. It's fun. I enjoy Mercedes and the chaos she brings to the table in ring for the past 6 months. She's been absolutely stellar as well. It's a very interesting match coming up with Momo at Revolution. I think it's going to be an absolute peach. Up. Oh boy, here comes Max Caster for his Best Wrestler Alive Open Challenge next. And let me tell you, this guy is really good being a loser, right? This is a really good bit across the board. He's got a little certificate that says he's the best wrestler alive. That is the only thing that entitles him to say that. Because every single time he comes out and issues this open challenge, he gets destroyed in a minute. This wasn't even a minute. This lasted about 20 seconds. But not to jump ahead, Max comes out, he does his promo, he tries to get the chant going in the crowd. This impossibly lame, let's go, Max, you're the best wrestler alive. Which, of course, nobody sings along with because this guy sucks in kayfabe, and it's just the most preposterous thing in the world. It's absolutely great. The same thing keeps happening to him every week, and he never learns because he's a heel and he's dumb. This time it's Jay White who comes out, beats him in one move. He just hits the Blade Runner, mocks the chant, pins him so gleefully. He's like the Cheshire Cat out there, eating all the cheese. Does the Cheshire Cat like cheese? It does now, for the purpose of this rant. Afterwards, Jay White gets on the microphone and he says, Adam Copeland, me and you have been buddies since you came in and you started fighting off them Death Riders. Well, I'm going to have your back at Revolution as you defeat Jon Moxley and become the new AEW World Champion. Meanwhile, Max Caster is just rolling around in pain because he's just got embarrassed again. Look, it's an up. This is a great bit across the board. Max is doing a tremendous job. I thought Jay was really effective here. He's leaning the baby faceisms on so heavily that actually, if he does turn on Cope at the weekend, that would make as much sense as him just sticking to it, and maybe he befriends this guy and then Cope wins and then he turns afterwards and twists the knife and goes, actually, I just want your title, mate. I'm not your friend, man who's 15 years older than me. Maybe that's how it pans out. They've got the options right there. And look, 2 thumbs up for Max Caster doing this bit. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, and the acclaimed kind of souring a bit towards the end was partly down to him and some of the things he said. So I think it's fair if people are taking a little bit of time to get into this. But let me tell you, I've been into this from moment one. He's doing a great job as this just ballooned ego jobber. It reminds me a lot of Heath Slater facing the Legends on WWE Raw all those years ago, just with a different flavor of it. So keep this up. I want to see him just get mauled by everyone. Then do Satnam Singh next. Why the hell not? We're getting to the business end of the show now, as we have a sit-down interview between Mariah May and Toni Storm with Renee Paquette, who's just had enough. She's had enough of Mariah May at this stage. They're sat down, it's the pre-recorded studio format, and they are laying it in heavily. Mariah was the more emotional of the two. In fact, she just got up and spat in Tony's face to start. Renee swore. Renee Young cursed. What? You understand the level of evil you have to be to make Renee Young curse at you? God, Mariah May, no respect. But her whole narrative part of this is that this is Tony's fault. Tony did this. I'm the only person that ever loved you, Tony, and you destroyed all of this. You built us up to this level. You are the reason that we are having this Hollywood ending at Revolution. Mariah is super amped up. Renee calls her out, to be fair. She does a really good job interjecting and going, you're talking rubbish, Mariah, what are you on about? And Toni Storm is just cold as ice. The reason this worked was the contrast between the two. Mariah is super fired up, animated, getting in her face, spitting and yelling and all this stuff. Toni is ice cold. She says, hey, Mariah May, at the end of all of this, you're just going to be forgotten. You are going to have a good career. You're not going to have a great one after I finish with you, and you will be ultimately lost to the annals of time. You will be replaced and forgotten, she said, and years from now when somebody asks, hey, whatever happened to Mariah May, the answer will be she found out what happens when you mess with God. Ice cold delivery. Boom. That's why it worked so well. You have fire over here in Mariah May, and you have ice over here. Two elements that do not mix. When they do mix, melting ice and fire goes out. All of that nonsense. You got in the middle as well, Renee staying perfectly grounded. What more do you want from these two heading up to this? Look, it's the most bombastic, it's the most melodramatic feud in AEW. It's bright, it's colorful, it's loud. Tony's verbiage throughout is she's just got a turn of phrase these days that really pops me. The whole stuff about being forgotten, that's more infuriating in a lot of ways to somebody of Mariah's complex. The idea that she won't be remembered, that all of this effort will have been for naught. That really speaks to the ego of the heel character on display. It's an up, and we're rolling now to the main event, which is, of course, Kazuchika Okada and Ricochet versus Swerve Strickland and Brody King. My goodness, what a collection of individuals this is. I have no idea what the four of these sitting around a train table would have a conversation about if they were, traveling together or whatever, and these characters bouncing off each other. Brody King's over here listening to hardcore. Kazuchika Okada's like, what the hell is this noise? I don't know. It'd be a wild time. Either way, this match was a lot of fun. And again, like earlier, it's combining two stories into one to get something fun. Brody King is wrestling Kazuchika Okada for the Continental Championship at Revolution. Meanwhile, Ricochet and Swerve Strickland, you know what's happening there already, baby. So yeah, this rocked. Early on, it's just complete chaos. They're brawling all the way around the ring. They end up stacking the two heels against the LED board. Brody King hits a crossbody, so impactful, the feed goes green and blurs for a second. It's the second time he's done that. If it's just a parlor trick that they're doing on TV, which it probably is, keep doing it. It's really effective. Creates a sense of chaos. It makes you feel like this impact truly is big. Yep. It's over as hell in the building as well. I mean, Brody King, man, look, I'm well aware. Where is he? There he is. Look, I'm well aware that I put this man over a lot, but when you have whole buildings of people barking like a dog for you, I mean, that's not a normal sound to make at all. And yet, here he is. The guy's awesome. I think he more than held his own in there with, some of the biggest names, some of the champions of AEW here, some of the former champions. The stuff between Swerve and Ricochet was very promising, very crisp, very tight, very impactful throughout. And it led to a really effective finish as well. So the stuff I said earlier on about Swerve outsmarting Ricochet in the opening segment, but Ricochet kind of turning that on his head by the end of the show? That's kind of where it came in here. Okada, sensing that maybe things were getting a bit desperate, brought his belt into the ring. Brody King ended up clotheslining him out of the ring, taking them both out of the match. That left Swerve, Ricochet, and the belt. Ricochet, the opportunist, profited from pure chance. Took the belt, whacked Swerve with it. Referee saw none of it. 1, 2, 3. Another win for Ricochet over his rival ahead of Revolution. This is an up, obviously. It was really good. And also, I really like that turn. That turn of fate and consequences. We've gone on from earlier, right? Ricochet had, Swerve, had the power in his hands there. He controlled the situation. He knew that Ricochet was going to come after him with some scissors, and he countered and did it back to him. Here, he felt the fate, and it shows that no matter how much control Ricochet thinks he has over a situation, Swerve, no matter how much he thinks he's in the driving seat, Ricochet is a sneaky little devil, and something like this can always happen. Blows the outcome of their match wide open. I don't know who's going to win this. Obviously, if maybe a bit of a tell for the main event. If Swerve wins, you'd imagine Moxley's going to keep the belt. But if Ricochet wins, maybe Cope, because it's more of a natural face-heel dynamic along the way. Either way, look, it feels like the main event for Revolution is wide open. And isn't that what you want heading in to one of the biggest shows of the year? Traditionally, this has been one of AEW's best shows on the calendar. And with matches like Swerve versus Ricochet and Cope versus Mox heating up, and Takeshita versus Omega, and Fletcher versus Ospreay. Yeah, it's a good card across the board. And hey, look, we've made it to the end here, and that's a nice little healthy ups and downs ratio for a very good episode of AEW Dynamite this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, it's the bank. Hello, the bank. What? The check bounced. It didn't clear. Oh God. Okay. That's a problem. I've just filmed this whole video on the idea that it was fine. All right. I tell you what. You tell Tony that this bias does not come cheap. And oh God, I'm gonna have to invent some downs now, aren't I? The butcher wasn't on the show. Down. I saw an anti-bold sign in the crowd. Down. GTA 6 isn't out yet. 3 downs. My coffee was slightly too bitter this morning. 3/4 of it down. I missed Simon Miller. 300 mega downs. What the hell am I doing? Bye. This was a good show. I'll be back for Revolution. See you later.